By mid-November 1944, Soviet Field Marshal Georgy Zhukov becomes the leader of the First Belarusian Front, leading hundreds of thousands of soldiers. Participating in the successful Soviet Vistula Uda offensive, Zhukov rallies his warriors for the one final push onwards towards Poland and then towards Berlin, the capital of the Reich, saying, "Soldiers, remember our brothers and sisters, our mothers and fathers, our wives and children tortured to death by the Germans. We shall extract a brutal revenge for everything." Merely 5 months later, on the 19th of April 1945, Zhukov's army was the first to break the defenses on the strategic Zilo Heights, leaving nothing between them and Berlin except broken divisions of the Wehrmacht. But how was Zhukov, a man who only 4 years earlier in 1941 was desperately defending Moscow against the German onslaught, able to masterfully drive the Germans back to the gates of their own capital? This is The Historiographer, and in this video, we will explore the life and times of Field Marshal Georgy Zhukov, hero of the Soviet Union and the man feared by Stalin himself. Georgy Zhukov was born to a struggling peasant family on the 1st of December 1896 in the Tsardom of Russia. As a boy, Georgy was sent to work with his uncle in Moscow as a cobbler, enabling him to live a relatively easier lifestyle. As a teenager, Zhukov worked with his uncle by day and was completing his education by night at a night school. On top of his education, he read books on mathematics, science, and Russian and German literature, enabling him to speak German. In 1914, the young man established his own fur business. However, in the same year, World War I would break out, forcing Zhukov away from his business. Zhukov was hence conscripted into the Imperial Russian Army, but was wounded in action. He earned the Cross of St. George twice for bravery, with the second medal having been earned as Zhukov used his German skills to convince a German officer to surrender. After the October Revolution led by Vladimir Lenin in 1917, Zhukov joined the Russian Communist Party, with his impoverished background giving him a significant advantage in party ranks. He fought in the Russian Civil War, trained as a cavalry officer, and received the Order of the Red Banner for quelling the Tambov Peasant Rebellion in 1921. In 1924, Stalin assumed leadership over the USSR after Lenin's death. At the same time, Zhukov was swiftly climbing the military ladder. He attended the Higher School of Cavalry, then the Frunze Military Academy, graduating on top of his class in 1930. In the interwar years, the USSR saw massive industrialization leaps thanks to Stalin's ambitious 2 5-year plans. In 1936, however, Stalin commenced his Great Purge, which decimated high-ranking officers within the Red Army who Stalin deemed suspicious. The Great Purge lasted until 1938, and Zhukov barely avoided getting purged, as in the same year in 1938, he was fortunately sent to assess the critical military situation in Mongolia, where the Japanese were dominating a series of border clashes against the Red Army. When Zhukov reported back his findings to Moscow, he was summoned to Moscow on the 1st of June, where he had feared that he was to be arrested and interrogated by the NKVD. Fortunately, Georgy Zhukov received word from Commissar of Defense Clement Voroshilov while in Moscow that Stalin expressed discontent with the current local commander, and that he would become the corps commander of the 57th Special Corps in Mongolia to counter Japanese provocations. With the war in Europe seeming imminent, Stalin's aim was to crush Japanese provocations and paralyze the effectiveness of the Imperial Japanese Army. These border clashes culminated in the pivotal Battle of Khalkhin Gol, where Zhukov's tactical genius was on full display. Certainly, with significant reinforcements, the Soviet Combined Arms Offensive began on August 20th, 1939, deploying tanks and air support in a daring encirclement maneuver. This victory not only cleared the Japanese from the border by forcing them to sign a non-aggression pact in the following month, but also served as testing ground for techniques later employed against the Germans in World War II. Zhukov's victory earned him the title of Hero of the Soviet Union, and in May of 1940, Zhukov became an army general, bringing him into Stalin's inner circle. Zhukov was one of the very few high-ranking Soviet officers who understood how to effectively deal with Stalin. He was able to gauge Stalin's mood by the way Stalin smoked his pipe, and hence adopt the necessary approach, making him one of Stalin's favorites. Zhukov became chief of the Red Army's general staff, but this glory would not last for long. On the 22nd of June 1941, Germany initiated Operation Barbarossa, prompting Zhukov to issue the infamous Directive of People's Commissariat of Defense No. 3, which ordered a counter-offensive against the Wehrmacht. Zhukov commanded the Red Army's forces to encircle and destroy enemy groups, but the offensive failed, resulting in large numbers of men taken as prisoners of war and horrific casualties. In his memoirs, Zhukov later claimed that he was pressured by Stalin to sign the directive. Zhukov's dismissal as chief of the general staff followed as a result of his failure, further attributed to his suggestion to abandon Kiev. Despite this setback, Zhukov led successful offensive, including the Yelnya offensive, and was appointed as commander of the Leningrad front in September of 1941, responsible for defending Leningrad against the German onslaught. However, a critical situation was unfolding with the German semi-encirclement of Moscow, and Zhukov was urgently recalled on the 7th of October 1941. The defense of Moscow was at a breaking point for the Red Army. However, Zhukov's presence managed to stabilize the situation. A month later, on the 7th of November, Stalin defiantly held the 1941 October Revolution parade in Moscow's Red Square, where Joseph Stalin delivered a speech to the soldiers, saying, "Comrades, it is in strenuous circumstances that we are today celebrating the 24th anniversary of the October Revolution. The enemy has appeared at the gates of Leningrad and Moscow. The war you are waging is a war of liberation, a just war, under the banner of Lenin, forward to victory." After this speech, many soldiers involved in the parade would infamously march on to battle and be killed by the advancing German army. By the 1st of December 1941, the German army is desperate, but they have achieved some success and breached the lines between two Soviet armies. Zhukov throws everything he has left into the breach. The situation is a slugfest, and Zhukov recalled the desperation of the German army in his memoirs. The enemy, ignoring the casualties, was making frontal assaults, willing to get Moscow by any means necessary. On December 2nd, a German combat engineer patrol reached merely 18 kilometers from Moscow's city center. This was the closest that the Germans ever got to Moscow. Only 3 days later, on the 5th of December 1941, the Great Red Army counteroffensive began, halting the Moscow offensive and pushing the Germans back from Moscow. Zhukov became deputy commander-in-chief and led the defense of Stalingrad on the southwestern front. Zhukov later planned the Stalingrad counteroffensive, famously known as Operation Uranus, with Vasilevsky. This operation broke the siege of Stalingrad and captured Field Marshal Paulus, ending on the 2nd of February 1943. After the stunning defeat in Stalingrad at the hands of Zhukov, and in practically the first public admissions of danger by the Nazi regime, Goebbels would declare total war in January of 1943. I ask you, do you want total war? Ich frage euch, wollt ihr den totalen Krieg? These efforts, however, proved unsuccessful against the rising Soviet wave. With Zhukov's successful coordinated efforts on the Leningrad and Volkhov fronts, as well as the Baltic Fleet in Operation Iskra, the general was promoted to Marshal of the Soviet Union on January 18, 1943. Zhukov was known among his men to be tough, ensuring discipline, all while being loved by the people for his tactical genius. He played a role in the Battle of Kursk in July of 1943, contributing to the Soviet victory alongside General Vasilevsky. While Zhukov claimed a central role in planning and executing the offensive, conflicting accounts from Commander Rokossovsky suggest Zhukov's involvement was greatly exaggerated. In any case, in early 1944, Zhukov coordinated actions between the 1st and 2nd Ukrainian fronts. He later commanded the First Ukrainian Front after the ambush of its previous commander, Nikolai Vatutin, by Ukrainian nationalists led by Stepan Bandera. During Operation Bagration, Zhukov coordinated multiple fronts. Most importantly, on November 16, 1944, Zhukov assumed command of the First Belarusian Front, commanding it in the Vistula-Oder offensive and the Battle of Berlin. As mentioned in the introduction, he rallied his troops with a call for revenge for the atrocities inflicted by the Germans. This, however, led to a trail of destruction and mass rapes by the hands of the advancing Red Army. Zhukov accepted the German instrument of unconditional surrender in Berlin on the 8th of May 1945, becoming a symbol of the Soviet victory. Stalin was growing increasingly paranoid of Zhukov's popularity with the people and with the Red Army. To place him away from any potential coups, Zhukov was entrusted with the command of the Soviet occupation zone in post-war Germany and led preparations for the Moscow Victory Parade of 1945. Stalin appointed him as parade commander, which resulted in these historic pictures of Zhukov atop an Arabic stallion. The general quickly returned to Berlin after this ceremony. In May of 1945, he signed resolutions to improve living conditions of the occupied Germans. From July to August 1945, Zhukov attended the Potsdam Conference with Allied representatives. As one of the four commanders of the Allied occupational forces, Zhukov developed strong relationships with Eisenhower, Montgomery, and Delattre, discussing war crimes, geopolitical relations, and post-war strategies. Zhukov's friendship with Eisenhower helped resolve post-war issues. Both toured the Soviet Union together, where Eisenhower introduced Zhukov to Coca-Cola, leading to Zhukov receiving 50 crates of the American drink. With Stalin's growing paranoia, he was replaced in April of 1946, following a session of the main military council where he faced accusations of egoism, disrespect, and political unreliability. Zhukov lost his position as commander-in-chief of the Soviet Army and was assigned to the Odessa military district, far from Moscow and lacking strategic importance. Later, he was transferred to a more insulting position in the Urals military district in February of 1948, which was considered a demotion. During this period, Zhukov faced attempts by security chief of the NKVD, Lavrenti Beria, to undermine him. Two of his subordinates were arrested and tortured, with one subordinate allegedly forced to implicate Zhukov in a conspiracy. Additionally, Zhukov was accused of unauthorized looting of goods confiscated from Germany, as evidenced by the discovery of valuables in his apartments and house in Moscow, after a search by Beria's NKVD. In February of 1953, Stalin removed Zhukov from his role as commander of the Urals military district and called him back to Moscow, saying that his expertise was needed for consultations on the Korean War. Upon Zhukov's arrival, he received no orders from Stalin, and Zhukov remained trained, fearing that Stalin might finally turn on him. Yet, on the 5th of March 1953, Stalin died of a stroke, marking a new phase in Zhukov's life. With the Soviet Union in a leadership crisis, Georgy Malenkov briefly took over as first secretary. However, he lacked the courage to do so alone and faced the threat of Beria. Seeking support from influential military figures, Nikita Khrushchev turned to Zhukov. On the 26th of June 1953, a secret meeting of the Soviet Politburo was convened by Malenkov. Khrushchev proposed expelling Beria from the Communist Party and bringing him before a military court, a plan which was executed by Zhukov's forces. Zhukov served on the military tribunal during Beria's trial, which resulted in a death sentence on December 18, 1953. At Beria's burial, Marshal Ivan Konev condemned his legacy, while Zhukov expressed his sense of duty in contributing to Beria's downfall, saying that it was the greatest thing he has ever done in his career. In 1955, as a reward for his help, Zhukov assumed the role of defense minister. Until 1955, Zhukov maintained correspondence with Eisenhower, promoting peaceful coexistence between these superpowers. He participated in the Geneva Summit Conference in July of 1955, following the USSR's withdrawal from Austria. During the Hungarian Revolution of 1956, Zhukov followed orders to intervene but recommended troop withdrawals to avoid extreme measures. However, when Hungary declared that it would leave the Warsaw Pact, the Soviets intervened. In October of 1957, he embarked on a diplomatic mission to mend relations with Yugoslavia and Albania. Yet, Zhukov faced condemnation as he was promptly removed from the Presidium upon his return to Moscow by Khrushchev's orders. The Central Committee accused him of non-party behavior, an adventurous foreign policy, Bonapartism, and promoting his own personality cult. Expelled from the Central Committee at age 62, Zhukov was forced into retirement. This abrupt turn of events reflected a Soviet fear of influential figures out of the fear that they may seize power for themselves, just like Napoleon. The reality is that Zhukov had no political ambition and was content with his role in military affairs. After leaving politics, Zhukov focused on writing his memoirs, Memories and Recollections, starting in 1958. Despite health issues and clashes with officials, the memoirs were published in 1969 and became a bestseller, publishing over 1 million copies, where Zhukov received over 10,000 letters from readers within months. Zhukov suffered a serious stroke in 1967, leaving him paralyzed on his left side. The hero of the Soviet Union died in Moscow on June 18, 1974, aged 77, after a second stroke. He was cremated and his ashes were interred at the Kremlin Wall. In conclusion, Marshal Georgy Zhukov remains one of the most influential figures in Soviet military history. Despite his flaws, his leadership, courage, and contribution to the Soviet Union's victory left a huge mark on history, cementing his place as one of the greatest military commanders of the 20th century. If you like this video, then consider subscribing to spread history. This has been The Historiographer, and for now, see you in the next video.